Thanks for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
Hello and welcome to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast. My name is Steve Jodorant. Joining me today is Jake Watroba. And on today's episode, we speak with Joel Soria of Quakes Epicenter to discuss all things San Jose Earthquakes. Now, listeners, we did record this interview a few weeks ago, so some of the stats that get brought up are a little bit dated. But the information and the insight Joel provides is still very much valid and a must-listen. Now, if you haven't done so, hit the subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, follow us at Unc Sam Soccer Pod, and go check out yesterday's episode. It was an MLS re-entry Monday. Jake, Armand, and I talk about the hottest issues in Major League Soccer. Now, let's get to today's episode.
Joining us now on the show is Joel Soria. You can follow Joel on Twitter at SoriaJoelFootball. Joel is the editor-in-chief of Quakes Epicenter, freelance writer for NBC Sports Soccer, and contributor for MLSsoccer.com. Joel, thanks for joining us, and how you doing?
I'm doing well, guys. Thank you for having me on here. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely, Joel, and let's just tell the listeners how you kind of started your writing career with a Reddit message. Yeah,
pretty funny. As I was telling you guys, when I was in college and when I was in high school, I was somewhat of a Reddit junkie to keep up, with soccer news and with sports news all across the board, and was a bit active, I guess, on our soccer, somewhat on our MLS and our Liga MX, and I just got this. I usually never check my private messages, to be honest with you, because I didn't really even know it was a function. For some reason, I was just kind of surfing the app that I was running Reddit through, and I found a couple different private messages from different people who wanted me to write for their website. I remember one was for MLS Multiplex, and the other one was for Offside Football, which is no longer around, and that was actually the first outlet that I wrote for back in late 2016, early 2017. So I took them up on their offer. I really did not know what I was getting myself into. I didn't even know how to carry myself in that sphere. So it was a huge, huge, huge learning curve that even now, 2.5, almost 3 years later, I'm still trying to find my way into, and it's not the most common story, but this is it's my story, and it's made me the person that I am today.
Well, Joel, once again, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's dive right into some San Jose Earthquakes talk here.
Yes.
Let's go back to the winter. Let's talk about the appointment of Matias Almeyda. It was no small deal. San Jose was in an ugly state. The 2018 season, they finished in last place with just 4 victories, all of them coming against Minnesota United and FC Dallas.
Nice. I remember, Joel, Jake was going on and on about Minnesota United having the ability to lose to the worst team in MLS. Not once, but twice.
The Earthquakes were Minnesota United's kryptonite last year, I guess. So, Joel, I guess our question for you is, why were they so bad last year? Why didn't anything work for the Quakes?
Oh man, there's a slew of reasons why 2018 was the worst year in franchise history. I think in the entire existence of the San Jose Earthquakes, that dates back to 1974. One of those is the internal atmosphere, within the club. It was shambolic, for a lack of better words, a disjointed locker room. in that also carried on to the field. There was also poor reinforcements made by Jesse Fiorelli and co. Transfers and signings that just did not make me send. It was bad. It was bad all across the board, and also, as the season went on, just a completely fractured relationship between former coach Miguel Starre and several of his players.
I mean, I honestly don't remember much of the Earthquakes last season. Jake, I mean, we barely even talked about them. The only times we did talk about them is when they ended up beating FC Dallas and Minnesota United. Just because we got somebody who covers FC Dallas and someone's located in Minnesota.
No, you're right. There was really no reason to talk about them last year. Like you said, 4 victories, bottom feeders in MLS. There was really no reason for them to ever come up. But then came along Matias Almeyda. And he was a game changer.
Yes.
The Argentine coach, Almeyda, had previously managed clubs who were relegated in Argentina, River Plate and Club Atletico Banfield. Both were led to the top division in Argentina in his first season in charge. He then moved on to Chivas down in Liga MX, where he won tons and tons of trophies, including a 2018 CONCACAF Champions League over MLS side Toronto. At the time of the hire, Earthquakes general manager Jesse Fiorelli said, "He is someone that knows how to redirect a team in a difficult situation with a commitment to a distinct style of play and youth development."
Joel, for a lack of a better comparison, San Jose were pretty much relegated last season based on their performance with only 4 wins. And they went out and got a manager that rescues clubs from the bottoms and brings them back up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That is Almeyda's forte. That's his bread and butter, to pick up teams at their lowest points and, bring them where they deserved. Look, River Plate, for instance, his boyhood club, I think, is one of the 3 most demanding teams in all of the Americas, without a doubt. One of the biggest, most prestigious teams in all the Americas as well. So, bringing back up the San Jose Earthquakes from the position that they were in last season wasn't going to be the biggest challenge in what has been, a 7-8 year plus coaching career for him. But it did have its obstacles. The Quakes aren't a deep pocketed team like the likes of LAFC or Atlanta United or even rival LA Galaxy. But his methodology is different, and it's based on hard work, dedication, commitment, sacrifice. All these things that the Quakes lacked. The Quakes were well behind in the psychological department. And ironically, that is Almeyda's strong point, right? That he really gets players to believe in one another. He makes sure that the players are willing to buy in to the club's, ethos, right? And that's exactly what's going on right now in San Jose. And trust me when I say this, I think everyone who is currently in tune, to MLS and to the sport here in our country should feel privileged that El Pelado is coaching stateside.
Joel, I want to ask you this. As somebody who covers the team, were you at all caught off guard when he was announced as manager? Like, was that in your mind in the realm of possibilities that Matias Almeyda was going to come to the San Jose Earthquakes after he had just spent time with Chivas? I believe in the fall and winter, he was being linked to the Mexican national team job after Juan Carlos Osorio left the Mexican national team. Were you at all surprised by the hire?
Somewhat. Look, before Matias came in, there were different names circulating. and they were of high stature. You had Peter Bosch from at that time Borussia Dortmund, former manager also for Ajax. A renowned Dutch manager. And then there was also that link between the Quakes and a current LA Galaxy coach, Guillermo Barros Schelotto. So two big names there of very, very high stature, very well recognized worldwide. And so, when Matias Almeyda's name came up, which came a couple of weeks after those two names that I mentioned, I was a bit surprised, given the fact that he had done wonders at Chivas, which is obviously one of Mexico's most popular teams. I thought bigger and better things were set in front for him, but he decided to jump on this venture.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I guess it's kind of a drop off. But what I even more fascinating is why he chose San Jose. I mean, he saw core players that were obviously worth investing into, which I found such a
right.
I mean, it was refreshing. It's really cool to see, but this is something that you just don't typically hear from a coach trying to into MLS. Obviously, there's no promotion relegation, but a team that beat literally just two teams in one season.
No, I mean, you're completely right. It came out of nowhere, and I think a big part of the reason why he decided to come to the Bay Area was because he was already a bit well acquainted with the area. Mexican teams are always coming out to California specifically to embark on their preseason tours. So he had been a frequent visitor. He had been a frequent visitor in the last 3 years that he was at Chivas. So I'm sure he had an understanding. Also, this is nothing new that I'm saying here. I believe everyone understands it now. Jesse Fioranelli's father was and I think is still an agent in Italy, and at one point in the 90s was one of the most prominent agents in Italy specifically, but across Europe. And at that time, he took Matias Almeyda over to Parma. So there's that link there, and obviously now that Jesse is the general manager of the Quakes, he decides who he wants to bring on board. He's the one that hires the coaches. So there was some mutual understanding, and I think that also played a big part.
Now, Joel, I want to talk about on the field now. Let's go to the start of the season. They start off 4 consecutive losses, including 3 at home. And Almeyda continued to preach patience, patience, patience. Veteran winger Shea Salinas said something to the effects of, he could have come in and totally cleaned house and changed personnel. He didn't do that. Even after losing those 4 games, he said, this is my group of guys. This team can win games. What does that quote say to you about Matias Almeyda?
Yeah, it's a quote that just really embodies, his ethos. In this case, a couple of sentences. He's a unifier. He's a motivational person, and he really makes no differences. He treats, or at least, what he says, that he wants to treat everyone as equally as possible, whether it's his coaching staff, whether it's his highest paid player or his lowest paid player, whether it's the people in the front office, the press, or even the groundskeeper. He really he lives, with that in mind, and that's what he did. He came in and he saw and he met his players and said, well, I don't make any differences. I think that you guys are capable of doing what you guys don't even think you can do, and that's exactly what they're doing right now. Now, to go back to the last statement I made about Matias Almeyda and Jesse Fioranelli's father, who's an agent, I just want to correct myself really quick. Jesse's father, the agent at the time, took Matias Almeyda to Lazio, not Parma. I take that back. Just wanted to correct that real quick.
Wow. You even self-correct. Man, this guy, Jake, this guy knows a lot. Even fact checks himself as we go. But Joel, what's fascinating about the start of 2019 is four consecutive losses. And then it's a -12 goal differential. And this team of late has been really, really hot. And a lot of it has to do with how well they are playing defensively. They get whacked 5-0 at home to LAFC March 30th. What changed?
At that time, obviously Matias, along with his coaching staff and along with some of the executives of the team, were honestly, really disappointed and discouraged that, things weren't going well, and that even though they had given this group of players all their confidence, they weren't meeting their expectations, and Matias has also been very candid about, through the press, letting players know that nothing's guaranteed, and that if they don't step up to the plate, if they don't fit the billing, then the door is open for anyone to leave. And I think that scared a couple of players, and that really motivated them, to finally break out of that poor mentality that they were in for so long. And then I guess also another part of it too was that, this team was learning a new and very demanding style of play. The man marking defensively has been the talk of the year, but it's just a very complete and sound tactical style. Obviously, also very, very peculiar, at least to those who've just been consuming MLS for years and years now.
Let me interrupt you there. I mean, this obviously is a sticking point, is this man-to-man marking. In your years covering San Jose and just watching the league, is it a sight of fresh air? Is it, a breath of fresh air when it comes to tactically just seeing something different on the pitch?
Oh, of course. I think not only is it a breath of fresh air, but it's revolutionizing. No one has tried to integrate the style that Almeyda has shown up with at all. We talk about, the big coaches MLS has seen, or at least the tactically sound coaches that MLS has seen in the last couple of years, and we think of maybe Gerardo Tata Martino. We talk about Greg Berhalter, maybe Bruce Arena. Bruce Arena obviously has a very outdated and conventional style that still works. It still works. I'm not saying it doesn't, but Matias comes from a different school, from a different school of thought and of philosophy, and he comes from a very sophisticated one. Now, a lot of you can really relate Almeyda's style to Marcelo Bielsa's current coach of Leeds, but it also has a lot of pieces from Arrigo Sacchi, who was his coach at Parma, and who was obviously, I don't know if you guys know, but he was one of the most influential Italian coaches in the 80s. He took returned AC Milan to glory. Sorry. And then there's also obviously a slew of South American coaches like Camacho, who really taught him a lot about the game off the field. So, it's a very sophisticated thing, and that's why there's been, books written about Matias Almeyda. Not only as a coach, but also as a player. He has a lengthy legacy behind him, and trust me, like you said, it is a breath of fresh air, but it's also very much revolutionizing.
Now, Joel, I was watching the most recent episode of Black and Azul last night, and I believe you had a quote that said Matias Almeyda's system, the man-to-man marking, is the most exciting way you've seen an MLS team play And I can't remember if you said it was this year or in the league's history. Why do you find it so exciting?
Well, I mean, Jake, let's pause there. You said that how is this possible over Tata's Atlanta LAFC's goal scoring streak right now, and they're plus, I think, 35 goal differential. I mean, there has been some teams that have really caught the attention of not only MLSers, but just globally.
I think we need to take into consideration the fact that Tata Martino had the most stacked team last season, and one of the most ambitious and on a monetary side, most expensive sides that the league has ever seen.
Right. And
you had an outline, I guess now is becoming a bit more normalized, performance from Joseph Martinez, scoring 31 goals and setting a league record, if anything, crushing it. And then you have this year you have LAFC, and I don't want to take any merit away. I'm no one to take merit away from these teams. That they've played really well, and I think the results speak for themselves. But we look at LAFC right now, and they don't have a Carlos Vela who's playing completely out of his skin. Scoring 21 goals in 20 games, and then you don't have that same LAFC. Long story short, what I'm trying to say is that these two teams have depended heavily on a couple of star figures. If you look at what Matias Almeyda is doing with the San Jose Earthquakes, and you take in consideration the way that their team is set up, the way it is structured, on paper, the Quakes are minnows. So, and that's just a part of it. The other side is the type of style that they're playing. I mean, this is a very peculiar style, something that is completely abnormal in this league. It's a bit more common, obviously, in much bigger and more competitive leagues like Argentina, and obviously all across the top 5 in Europe. In Mexico, Matias's style really bared fruit for 3 years. It wasn't until the latter stages of his stay at Chivas that things started to get a bit complicated, and that's obviously because the coaches in Mexico, there's somewhat of a carousel. The coaches just kind of rotate, right? They get fired. They're all about short-term expectations, very high expectations. If you don't meet them, you get the boot. There's a lot of pressure there, but that also creates this environment where managers are just kind of rotating teams around and around. Well, that creates even a much more fiercer sphere of competition. So people really caught on to what Almeida was all about, and towards the end, like I said, they were able to nullify him a bit, but that's not the case right now in MLS. And Greg Berhalter obviously I think did wonders with Columbus while he was there, but let's keep in mind as well that he never brought any silverware, and we have yet to see if Almeida is going to do that with San Jose. But to the eye and even to those who are very keen on analytics, the numbers and the eye tests so far are passing with flying colors.
It's funny you mention trophies there, Joel, because Steven has a hot take on the San Jose Earthquakes that I want to get to here before we wrap up the show. But yes. I want to talk about players. I want to talk about the ageless wonder, Chris Wondolowski. He's got 9 goals in 20 games this season. He had 10 goals all of last season. Shea Salinas, he's having a career year under Almeyda with 5 goals and 3 assists in 17 games played. What has Almeyda done to get the most out of guys like Salinas or guys like Wondolowski?
Yeah, well, I think a part of it has a lot to do with the day-to-day operations. So the way that they train, the way that they prepare themselves, right on the field, also on the training grounds, in the weight room. And then the other part, the biggest part is the expectations he has for his players, right? The fact that he demands them to run, to continue running, for everyone to put out a nonstop 90 minutes just full of hustling and bustling. And the other part is the psychological side, right? The fact that he's given his players, the freedom, the liberty, and the confidence to just really trust not only themselves but each other. And that's a part of that family ethos that they've created. So it's a little bit of both, to be honest with you. And then I think the last third also has a lot to do with the players themselves. They well know the position that they were in last season. All those negative emotions that they felt. And I think the one thing that Matias has been trying to instill and been trying to get across is that, a lot of the times pro athletes, pro soccer take what they have for granted. The fact that, soccer isn't always going to be there, and that they need to play, purely based on passion and on love for the game, and not for financial reasons, not for fame, not for any of that. You go out and you play. You obviously play for your teammates, you play for yourself, your family, and for the fans. And it seems like all of that has really seeped into the players' minds.
Wrapping up here slowly but surely. Question of the day, listeners, at UncSam Soccer Pod. Send in your thoughts. What is the ceiling for the San Jose Earthquakes? Now, here's some fun stats for you guys. Now, reading from MercuryNews.com, Elliot Almond, the Earthquakes are 9-2-4 in their last 15 MLS regular season games, heading into a home match Saturday against the Colorado Rapids. The Quakes, 10-7-4, 34 points, are undefeated in their last 8 home matches with a 7-0-1 record since April 6, when the turnaround began. So, Joel, my point being, this is obviously a very hot team, and we had the Leagues Cup begin this last week, and Almeyda's one of the few that have spoken up, going, wait a minute. We actually would have liked to play in this tournament. We would have liked to see how we competed against Mexican sides, and it led me to believe and go down this rabbit hole, and you could call me crazy or not, but a lot has been said whether or not an MLS team would ever win the CONCACAF Champions League, this trophy, this Bigfoot of a trophy that everyone wants to see be lifted by an MLS club. And I sat there, I was like, Almeyda has the history of succeeding in the CONCACAF Champions League. And the way he plays, it seems like it could work in as far as quote-unquote tournament football. And I'm led to believe that in the next several years, if he sticks on with the Earthquakes in this project that he seems to be so heavily invested in, I could very well see them have a successful run, maybe not to the MLS Cup, but maybe a Supporters' Shield or even a U.S. Open Cup run next season that brings them to CONCACAF Champions League and ultimately making a deep run into that tournament. Am I crazy to think that?
No, I think everyone has the opinion to dream on. I don't think you're reaching too far, though, to be honest with you. Really, I personally think that, with what they're showing this season and with the flexibility that they'll have, to add reinforcements this winter and also let go of players that are not really fitting the profile, I would say that, cracking into the CONCACAF Champions League, or what I think is the more logical scenario is making it into the Leagues Cup. I think they'll be a threat if they get in. Sure, why not? I mean, I'm not really based on predictions. I don't like giving a whole lot of predictions, but I did give one before or early when the season started, and I said that I thought the Quakes were going to finish either 7th or 6th in the West. Currently, they're 5th, and they're trending upwards. By the way everything looks at the moment, they have a 79% chance to make playoffs, and they can well finish in the top 3 in the West. It's a remarkable year. It's very possible. What's going on right now in San Jose is, sincerely historic.
Yeah, and Joel, it's funny you mentioned their playoff odds as of today at 79%, because according to 538 on March 31st, after the 5-0 defeat at home to LAFC, the San Jose Earthquake had just an 8% chance of making the playoffs.
Wow.
So this has truly been an incredible turnaround for this club. But Joel, thank you so much for joining us today. Please tell our listeners where we can find your work, where we can find you on Twitter. It's the shameless plug. The floor is yours.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. It was a pleasure to be here and conversing with you. I had a great time. For those listeners, you can find me on Twitter at Soria Joel Football. I just started recently at NBC Sports Soccer, Pro Soccer Talk, so you can find me there as well. I also contribute to MLSsoccer.com, obviously writing a whole lot about the Quakes there. I host a weekly YouTube show called Black and Azul. You can look up Black and Azul on YouTube and you will find us there. You can subscribe, watch some of our videos. Like I said, we film on a weekly basis either at our studio or on site at Avaya Stadium after games. And I also am the editor-in-chief of Quakes Epicenter. Although I do have, I guess, somewhat of an announcement to make on here. I'll say it here because it seems like a fitting situation. I don't know how long I'll be doing that for, but currently I am the editor-in-chief. So yeah, that's where you guys can find me.
Oh, there you go. A little bit of news from the man himself. Joel, really appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Well, there you have it. Our good, I guess, new friend of the show, Joel. Make sure you catch his work. Very insightful, very knowledgeable. Jake, San Jose, I guess, gonna make some noise. I mean, 79% chance of making the playoffs. Almeyda has his team cooking. We read out the stats there at the end. Listeners, question of the day at Uncle Sam Soccer Pod. What is the ceiling for the Earthquakes? I don't know, a sneaky team? It's MLS is hard to make predictions often. We're not really in the business to make predictions. But just for the run of form, it's like, how far can this team go?
Steven, I don't think you know who your co-host is here. I don't think you know who loves to make predictions and who loves to be completely wrong on them.
Well, yeah, that's
question of the day, listeners, at Uncle Sam Soccer Pod. What is the San Jose Earthquakes ceiling? And I'm gonna tell you it right now. Okay.
Okay.
You ready for this?
I'm listening.
This team can compete for MLS Cup.
Oh, I agree.
This team can compete. The man marking system, it has proven to give team fits. It gave the Galaxy fits a couple of weeks ago,
and they steamrolled the Galaxy. That was the impressive part. Not only did they win, they steamrolled the Galaxy. And here's an important note, listeners. LAFC is beatable. When the lights shine brightest for LAFC, they have yet to really step it up. Think about it. The lights were bright against the Galaxy Friday night a couple of weeks ago. Bright as they can be. The entire league was looking at Ibrahimovic versus Carlos Vela. I mean, this is ideally what the league wants, right? Two teams, rivals, both teams successful, winning on the field, and two great stars going at it. This was NBA Friday night, but turned MLS.
I think they can play with any team in the league with the way that Almeyda has it set up. The Quakes.
Yes. With
their man marking system. I just think they're going to be a problem for teams when it's when the season turns into a one-game elimination every week.
And LAFC is beatable. I'm not saying they're currently, yes, they're having a fantastic season, and if they go on to win it, I don't think that would be a surprise. But what I'm saying is we should pay attention to when the lights shine brightest for LAFC, because LAFC has struggled in those moments. But we'll see. Listeners, question of the day: what is the ceiling for the San Jose Earthquakes at UncSam Soccer Pod? We appreciate the feedback, the comments, so continue to send them in. Stay tuned for some more fantastic content coming your way. Follow Jake at Jake Watrova, at Steven Jodorant. And until next time.